This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. Tens of thousands of people from Central African Republic have fled violence that followed a December election to neighboring countries. The United Nations says conditions are, quote, very bad for many living in remote areas. Angela Ukomadu of Reuters has more.
Near a bend in Democratic Republic of Congo's Ubangi River, makeshift structures have been appearing. This and remote locations like it are now home for tens of thousands of people fleeing violence in neighboring Central African Republic. Many have little access to food, water, or sanitation. Tian Nkawa, a UN Refugee Agency representative in DRC, says the families are living in very bad conditions.
It's really difficult to explain how they managed to survive because we found people living outside.
The Ubangi River forms the border between Central African Republic and DRC. Across the river from the shelters in Zongo lies CAR's capital, Bangui. Violence in December sent more than 120,000 people into neighboring Cameroon, Chad, Republic of Congo, and DRC. Around 164,000 more are internally displaced. The UNHCR has started biometric registration to establish the number of new arrivals and to identify people with specific needs.
We found malnourished children. We found hungry people.
Following registration, UNHCR has relocated hundreds to sites further inland. They'll be safer there and can receive further humanitarian help.
Angela Ukomadu of Reuters with that report. At least 23 migrants from Africa drowned in a shipwreck off Tunisia as they tried to cross the Mediterranean from Libya to Italy, and 70 were rescued, according to the Tunisian Red Crescent humanitarian organization. More than 120 migrants have died in recent weeks in similar incidents off the Tunisian coast, as improved weather has increased the number of trips from Tunisia and Libya towards Italy to reach Europe. The Tunisian Navy also rescued 39 other migrants who were on another boat that sank off the coast of Sfax. The UN Refugee Agency UNHCR says fewer than 23,500 people have made it across the sea to Europe this year, with most new arrivals landing in Italy and Spain, coming from Tunisia and Algeria. As fighting in pockets of Ethiopia's Tigray region continues, local farmers are facing a shortage of seeds and fertilizer, leading to dwindling food supplies. Louisa Knox of Reuters reports.
These people are waiting for packages that could save their lives. Scarred by an ongoing conflict, people in Ethiopia's Tigray region are now facing another threat: dwindling food supplies. Stores are running low, and as planting season approaches, farmers are running out of seeds and fertilizer. Without the supplies, thousands will run out of food as they wait for harvests. And that's why the International Committee of the Red Cross, in partnership with the Ethiopian Red Cross Society, is distributing seeds and fertilizers to 16,000 families in Tigray's central zone. Haregu Teshale is grateful for the help.
We are very happy to receive the fertilizers. The land cannot grow crops without fertilizer, and the fertilizers we had were looted.
Agriculture is the primary source of livelihood in rural Tigray. The mountainous area's climate and soil pose significant challenges to farmers who depend heavily on fertiliser. Since armed conflict flared up last November, subsidised seeds and fertilisers have become unavailable. Malaika van Klinken is a team leader for the ICRC's Economic Security Programme.
What they were worried the most as the conflict started and as everything was going on, what stresses them the most is the lack of being able to produce food. So this has driven them to continue farming, to continue ploughing their lands, and the reaction has been overwhelming.
The ICRC has warned that families who still can eat 2 meals a day may soon be forced to have just one.
That was Luisa Nax of Reuters reporting. Much of Africa have been spared the death toll that COVID-19 brought to other regions, but it now faces recession, growing violence and higher unemployment because of the pandemic, according to a new report. The 2021 Ibrahim Forum report was released ahead of the annual conference this weekend of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, which promotes good governance in Africa. The report says the African countries implemented strict travel restrictions and robust contact tracing when the outbreak began, potentially saving millions of lives. However, Africa was the only continent where incidents of violence rose over the course of the pandemic. When entrepreneur and philanthropist Haregu Teshale launched his beauty business, he set out to establish a company that provides a more natural alternative to consumers, promoting organic products grown in Africa, such as shea butter, empower women and children, as well as uplift communities. But despite the rewards, his work as an entrepreneur came with its own set of issues. In part 2 of his interview with Africa 54's Linomudu, Haregu Teshale, founder and CEO of Alafia, elaborates on the challenges and opportunities of doing business from Africa to the US and how to address some of the bottlenecks.
So what are some of the challenges you often encounter? You spoke about some of them already, but talk to us about this experience as an entrepreneur, as an African native, as someone who is importing in the US from Africa.
I call it regional integration. It is fundamental to our economic growth. Before we even talk about how do we sell the product in America, is how are we selling product to each other, and how we're driving our own local economies within the neighboring countries. It has never been easy in terms of, so we need regional integration, and I meant mostly logistics and banking. The enforcement of contract is very important. In the business, you need to feel safe that a contract that I have with you can be enforced in the court. And that gives you the confidence to have it been binding and to invest. If we cannot have faith in our court systems, then it's difficult to be able to engage and want to invest. Part of entrepreneurship is to overcome the challenge and to change what is not working, and to speak about what is not working to our leaders around the world, and particularly in Africa, so that we can make it more possible to do business.
What advice would you give people who would like to engage in doing business from Africa to the United States, getting products, for example, locally and shipping them here? The kind of business model that you've adopted, what would you say?
Simply having a product is not enough. How are you going to be different on the shelf or an e-commerce platform? So your reason to be is critical, and it's fine if you just want to make money. But I can tell you from the past 18 years, you can make money and you can also serve your community. As far as the U.S. is concerned, it is understanding, is this a product that Americans want to consume? Is it relevant to American psychology? People may feel intimidated by American regulation. Well, I can tell you is that the regulations in America are less than regulations in Togo. So start small and don't give up.
What about the perception that products that come from the African continent do not compete when it comes to quality?
Clearly, we have a lot of misconception when it comes to our continent. The Alafia products are within the top 5 brand within the natural food industry in America. And clearly, those are all African-based products. So I'm convinced that we can override the misconception. We need to explain more that we are offering something unique to the world. We need to change our psychological ourselves. Once we change our own psychological base, with confidence that what I have is unique and you, the world, don't have it. Therefore, you got to have this.
So when we talk about social responsibility in retail, what do you see as the future of social responsibility?
I think the social responsibility go hand in hand with the appetite, at least in America, in Europe as well, for consuming natural product, right? Because social responsibility really focuses about the ethics that governs or how you may spend the results that you derive from the economic activity or how you run your organization. When we look as we go in the future, the social responsibility become even more critical. And I believe that Africa is very well positioned to be part of that growth. We can make products that are natural to begin with. That is what the world wants to consume. We need to invest in our communities. We need to be socially responsible entrepreneurs because our community needs us. We cannot wait for somebody else to come and solve our own problem. We've got to be solving the problems that we have.
What are some of the takeaways from this experience with Alafia? And what would you describe as the most satisfying achievement of your work?
I have a long way to go. And I cannot claim an achievement on my own. Certainly, there's many people that have contributed to where we are today, and we're blessed and humbled by it. But if I were to point out an achievement, I think two things. We take Togo, for instance. Outside Lomé, Alafia is the longest and the majority woman-run enterprise. Most of our organizations die within 2 years. We're on our 18th year. But I think it's also, for me, to demonstrate to the world that Africa and African-based ingredients and African-derived fundamental knowledge has the right to play with the big guys on American shelves. And we do.
Olowo Njo Chala, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was Africa 54 correspondent Lino Mudu speaking with Olwonjo Chala, founder and CEO, Alafia. President Joe Biden was in Oklahoma Tuesday, becoming the first sitting U.S. president to commemorate the anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre, the destruction in 1921 of a prosperous Black community by a white mob that left up to 300 people dead and thousands homeless. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
In 1921, Greenwood was a prosperous African-American community in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It included a neighborhood known as Black Wall Street. A white mob, assisted by an all-white police department, burned Greenwood to the ground, leaving hundreds of people dead and thousands homeless. A dark chapter in the nation's history that has been largely buried for decades.
Even people that are native to Tulsa didn't know about it until recently.
On Tuesday, President Joe Biden visited the Greenwood Cultural Center. He is the first U.S. president to commemorate the anniversary of the tragic event in Tulsa.
My fellow Americans, this was not a riot. This was a massacre.
He met with 3 survivors of the massacre, all over 100 years old.
You are the 3 known remaining survivors of a story seen in the mirror dimly, but no longer. Now your story will be known in full view.
While the national conversation has increasingly focused on the issue of systemic racism and Black Lives Matter, the Tulsa massacre was covered up for decades.
Records were actually removed from the City Hall, removed from the library. They deliberately covered up that whole history. And then now you see a continued attempt to, continue to whitewash the history of racism and white supremacy in this country.
In the centuries since the massacre, Black Americans continue to be discriminated against. According to government data, the typical white family has 8 times the wealth of the typical Black family, a gap that widened further during the pandemic. Biden announced steps to narrow the gap, including plans to invest tens of billions of dollars in disadvantaged communities, expand federal contracting with minority-owned businesses, and repeal 2 Trump-era rules that restrict fair housing practices. But he did not mention reparations, whether for the Tulsa massacre survivors or for the enslavement of African Americans.
It's hypocritical for us to go out around the world and try to demand other countries treat their citizens right and to be fair and just when America has yet to be just and has yet to atone for her worst race massacre in American history.
Biden's visit came at a time when many conservative states are pushing for new voting laws. Republicans say they want to reduce fraud, but Democrats say their real goal is to make it harder for blacks and other minorities to vote. Biden is appointing Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the administration's efforts on expanding voting rights. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Would love to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. Our address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, how one Ugandan organization is using local languages to equip the youth and women with vital digital skills. We'll be right back.
Join me on the next Straight Talk Africa when we'll look at Africa's urban future. As the continent continues to urbanize, how will cities accommodate those flocking there and those who are already there? We'll also talk smart cities in Africa. How smart is the idea itself? And we'll hear what you love and don't love about your city. We'll bring you all of that on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Welcome back to Africa 54. On Tuesday, Italy lifted restrictions on indoor dining. Germany downgraded the coronavirus risk level from very high to high, and Israel lifted almost all pandemic restrictions. More from VOA's Maria Matiello.
Italians are welcoming an end to months of pandemic lockdown. For some, sipping coffee indoors at their favorite cafe reminds them of the simple pleasures long denied to them.
This is one of the many signs of starting again. One coffee gives us the feeling of living serenely again.
We drink this first coffee with pleasure. We are starting again. Let's hope for this for everyone. We have missed these traditions.
Italy has endured in and out restrictions since last year, when the country became one of the world's first COVID-19 hotspots.
Seeing this place fill up again after almost 4 months gives me a huge sense of satisfaction, above all for a place as big and important as this one.
Italy has registered more than 4.2 million COVID-19 cases, but new infections have declined of late amid a successful vaccination campaign. Meanwhile, German health officials said the coronavirus risk level in the country has been reduced from very high to high. But they warned it does not mean the pandemic is over.
It means that the second and third wave, a very, very difficult situation, has been broken. The numbers are much better than they were, but high also means they are still a risk, and if we are not careful, that could change again very quickly.
The number of new weekly cases has fallen to about 3 dozens per 100,000 residents nationwide. And in Israel, a very special day. Almost all restrictions have been lifted, rendering unnecessary the green vaccination passes that until now had been required to access public venues.
After quarantines and close downs and all the restrictions we've been experienced, now we are opening all the activity in Israel and no more Green Pass.
With a population of 9.3 million, Israel has delivered over 5.4 million first doses and at least 5.1 million second doses of the Pfizer vaccine. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
As airlines plan recoveries from the coronavirus pandemic, Kenya's state-of-the-art flight simulator, the first of its kind in East Africa, is expected to cut costs and increase productivity. Here's Okwi Oko of Reuters with more.
A passenger plane cruises the sky, thousands of feet in the air. But the pilots are in fact on the ground. This is Kenya News' state-of-the-art flight simulator, the first of its kind in East Africa and only the third on the continent. After a global health crisis that's forecast to have cost African airlines $40 million, it's a part of a regional strategy to recover. In Nairobi on Tuesday, pilots from low-cost Kenyan airline Jambo Jet are taking the controls, overseen by flight instructor James Strong.
You're able to put different scenarios, you're able to change the weather, you're able to put malfunctions if need be, and a couple of other things.
The simulator is also able to replicate sensations like those produced when accelerating for takeoff or during turbulence. It's now operational after a deal struck between Flight Safety International, national carrier Kenya Airways, and Jambo Jet. Jambo Jet's acting managing director, Karanga Ndegwa, says the simulator will cut operational costs, such as sending pilots overseas for training, by at least 10%.
The cockpit crews, pilots' productivity is higher, and it's cheaper in terms of you don't pay any hotels, you don't pay any travel.
Airlines across the world have been hit as lockdowns closed borders. The simulators are being used to train pilots for a new fleet of 5 de Havilland Canada DHC-8 aircraft. The planes, simulator, and plans for new routes are all part of a strategy that Jambo Jet hopes will land the business on firmer ground.
That was Okwi Oko of Reuters reporting. In our tech news, a Ugandan non-profit organization, Digital Literacy Initiative, uses local languages to empower young people and women with digital skills, training, and improve their chances of getting employment in the growing information and communications technology industry. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho, via Skype, spoke to John Katambi, team lead Digital Literacy Initiative in Kampala, Uganda.
John Katambi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Voice of America, for having me on board.
You run an initiative in Uganda that helps to empower a lot of younger people with digital skills. Can you bring me up to speed?
Over the years, I've had passion in ICT and education in the areas of internet governance, cybersecurity, information security, child online protection, open data for persons with disabilities. So it is from this passion that I started up an NGO called the Digital Literacy Initiative in Uganda that looks at bridging the digital skills gap among children, women, youth, and persons with disabilities.
For purposes of our audience, when you talk about digital skills, do you go out there, train them, or you bring them somewhere and interacting with them, show them how some of these things work?
There is a gap. Wherever people go to these areas, in the rural areas, they do the digital skilling in the English. So you find that as they leave, people have forgotten already what they've been taught. So what we do as an organization is to go an extra mile to deliver this digital skilling in local languages. For example, if we go to the Western Uganda, we identify people who can explain this in a local language in Western Uganda. If we go to the Eastern, so that by the time we leave, we are connecting in terms of how do you create a folder, how do you create an email address, how do you use mobile money, for example, to a market woman to see that your business still continues.
What's your target audience?
Number one are women. of course, women in business, and then number two, the youth in high schools and of course in universities and higher education, institutions, and of course, persons with disabilities.
This field of computers, this field of STEM, anybody can do it if you set your mind to it, especially for the young girls. They too can be the next big tech entrepreneurs. What can you do on your part to encourage or to help some of these young girls in rural areas to be part of the STEM network?
I think we need to have initiatives that have got e-mentoring, fellowship programs for our girls in school, in high school, primary, or even universities, where we bring up, for example, women who have made it in technology or computer science or engineering, to talk to them, speak with them, share with them inspirational stories of how they started and who they are now. So if we would have such programs, I believe the number would raise to, a much bigger number in technology. But then too, of course, governments, of course, need to work with the NGOs who are already having such initiatives. For example, maybe to come up with webinars on ICT. If, for example, government says the Ministry of ICT is going to be having weekly webinars on Thursdays to, give mentorship to secondary or high school or universities. This would also be a good initiative that we would encourage.
Where do you see the future of technology in Uganda?
The future of internet in Uganda, as the world, comes to the fourth industrial revolution. Issues such as artificial intelligence, using robotics, AI, among others. I think Uganda is one of those that are trying to embrace. So there is hope, and I love the fact that our population is for the youth. These are people between 18 and 35 years. So if we start to engage them now, Uganda as economy, I think, will be far from where it is now as it embraces technology in every sector, because we believe technology is an enabler. So if we use it very well in our sectors, I think even our economy will be growing at a very fast rate.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was Africa 54's tech correspondent Paul Ndiho speaking to John Katambi, Digital Literacy Initiative in Kampala, Uganda. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.